I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska in the Gallup offices in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on September 29th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have independent strengths experts and coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. It's right below the main video window, and we'd like to have you log in and ask us questions while you're there. It's a great way to interact with the program. If you're listening to the recorded version or you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, contact us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or you can contact us through, there's a contact form right there on the coach's blog at coaching.gallup.com/live. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. You can also catch the video on both streaming and now downloadable audio for offline listening. If you haven't figured out the way to do this yet, you can download this to your phone and listen to it in the car, on a train, in a plane. As you travel, a great way to recoup that time that you're out there. We have all that available, including our mobile apps where you can get your top 5 at your fingertips. Of all that's available for free if you want to head over to our coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with our Gallup offices in Delhi. And Pooja, it's always great to see you. It's late, but it's always great to see you on Call to Coach.
Nice to see you too, Jim. Hi, everyone. Very warm welcome
Hi.
to the Indian edition of Gallup Call to Coach. Our guest for today is a gentleman called Anand Pillai. He's the managing director of Leadership Matters, a company that's focused on creating an entrepreneurial culture within organizations. I know Anand has been also a leadership coach for the past 17 years. And from all the discussions that we've had on and off, I do know he's been an early adapter of the idea of strengths-based development. And has recently also become a fully certified Gallup Strengths Coach. To his credit lies a lot of performance coaching with leaders, with executives, with senior management across industries. I know you've been working with a multitude of industries, including hospitality, telecom, manufacturing, etc., and also across the world. So I know you've been working in the Middle East, UK, Europe, North America, India, Singapore, of course. So it's such a delight to have you here, Anand. And we'll start off our interaction with you today, asking you about your top 5, and then we'll take your journey from there as a strengths-based coach.
Yeah. Pooja, thank you for the introduction and thank you for your kind words. My top 5 is my number 1 is strategic. My number 2 is communication. Number 3 is significance. Number 4 is activator. And number 5 is command. I'm the number 5 because I am told, as per research, less than 5% of the people are having command. So I'm possibly in that 5%.
Yes, I remember talking about that. So tell me, Anand, from all the discussions that we had when we met in Delhi when you were doing your certification, I know from previous organizations, etc., you always had a chance to be familiar with the Strengths Finder. I know you did internal certifications, which Gallup used to do earlier, and then you decided to get onto the accelerated program and you did your full-fledged Gallup certification. So tell me your journey from there. What about the Strengths Finder intrigued you, and how has your journey been so far for yourself? And then we'll talk about what you've been doing with it.
Yeah. See, somewhere in 1998, when we were working with one of the clients, we were introduced to this concept of SPC, or Strengths Performance Coach. And at that time, to be very frank, I did it because the client required us to have SPC certified people to be involved in that. Around the time also, I was exposed to this whole positive reinforcement. So anyway, I did that assessment, and as I went through the entire unfolding of the strengths, I found 3 things very distinctively different. I, at that point in time, was already a type certified person, MBTI and DISC and so on. And as you would know, the big difference is a type instrument tells you how similar you are, whereas this trait instrument, which possibly is the most simplest of all the trait instruments, tells you how different you are. And that fits in very well, because my number 7 strength is individualization. I personally believe that God has created each one of us as a first class original, and most of us try to die a second rate copy. So this entire philosophy, the way it was described, the way it unfolded, really made sense. So the first one is, it told me how different I am. The second one is the fact that it is in plain English, as opposed to a very complicated psychometric wheel and color charts and things like that. And the third one was the fact that the personal insights that came out of it were actionable here and now, and that made it easy. So I got an instant liking to this instrument and approach the moment I got used to it or introduced to it.
Great. And yeah, you're right about the simplicity of the test. So tell me a little bit about, when you saw your top 5. So when you saw your strategic communication, I know a few of them really resonated with you, even when we were talking in the program that day. I remember communication is what we spoke about a lot as well.
Yes.
Any particular talent that resonated more with you, or something that came as a surprise when you took your Strengths Finder?
I don't think anything came as a surprise as much as the fact that this was a reinforcement of what I already believed. In fact, I still remember 2 of my colleagues, one of them senior, they said, Anand, did you have to do a strength finder kind of an assessment to know what your top 5 strengths are? Aren't these obvious? I said, yes, it is obvious, but in one sense, this validates what I already know to be my strengths. Although I personally was a little bit surprised that strategic is my number 1 and not communication. Always believe that communication, my ability to tell stories, my ability to really make things humorous is really my top forte. But it also comes from the fact that I have that ability to see the big picture and find solutions in an unconventional manner. So strategic and communication were well on there. Significance is right there. And of course, activator. That fits in also very well with my number 8 strength, which is achiever, and therefore I'm a type A person. I've got a little bit. I get impatient when no activity is there. So I really am the go-getter and get things going. And I'm glad that I have achiever as my number 8 because that enables me not only to start things but also to get things done. So I'm very pleased with the way this has come out. It's a reinforcement and a validation of who I am and what I do.
Great. That sounds. I know I know you sort of it resonated with you when we spoke about that. I'm really interested in understanding. So, for example, in the Leadership Matters, the company that you run, what has been the role of strengths-based development so far, and has that changed since you got certified? Has there been a change in the way you've been approaching your coaching post then?
I don't think it has changed because I was a strengths performance coach earlier, and this company is very new. It is less than 6 months old. It's only about 5 months old, Leadership Matters. But prior to that, I was the Chief Learning Officer of India's largest corporation, Reliance Industries, and that was for a period of close to 4 years. And before that, for a good 14 years, I was with HCL Technologies, and the last role that I held there was that as the global head for talent transformation. I have used or strengths-based coaching or strengths-based approach has really changed the way I look at my team, I look at my organization, I look at my clients in a very distinctive way, and I can at least talk about 2 people whose lives have drastically changed because of the strengths-based philosophy.
I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, one you possibly definitely know, and that is John K. John. I recruited way back in 2005 in HCL Technologies. And at that time, he used to work for a smaller company, ANZ Grindlays IT, and I recruited him as one of the trainers. One of the two things that stood out very, very distinctively, much before he did the strength-based assessment, was his ability to bring in positive energy into the group, and his ability to empathize and connect with people. Along the journey, I think about 1 or 2 years after that, we introduced this particular instrument because we were running a hypo program in HCL Technologies called Top Gun. And so we had to have all the facilitators as well as the high potential individuals go through. And here was John, this bundle of energy, who really came out with the positivity. I mean, you can be in your worst of moods and you meet John, and suddenly the air around you lightens up. I mean, he's such a pleasure to have. So I've been working with him for now a little more than 10 years around this philosophy. And when I moved on almost 2 or 3 months afterward, I took him along, and so he came on to Reliance, and we've been doing these programs. So he's been very distinctively affected, positively affected by this. And of course, I encouraged him a little more than 6 months ago to go and get strength certified. But at that time, I was only SPC. So I said, listen, I don't know of a similar certification available in India, but look for this. And therefore, he got certified, and he's all gung-ho about this. So that is John K. John.
Yeah, absolutely. John's story, I think Jim's nodding his head too. John's such a pleasure to know, and we've had a chance to interact with him on more than one occasions now. And he absolutely resonates. You can see that he knows his talents, and they absolutely come out in whatever he does. So it's always a pleasure to hear of him.
Yes.
What else? You mentioned about 2 case studies, yeah?
Yeah. The other person was my secretary. When I came back from US, somewhere in 2002, I had a secretary. This guy in operations at that time, and he was really not at all happy. I mean, he was very not self-confident. He was unhappy the fact that he did not look good. His English was not very well. And those days, I'm talking about the early 2000s, we used to have stenographers, and therefore, we would give dictation, and they have to take that and go there and type it. He did not know stenography very well. He wasn't that good in typing. So in the typical secretarial typing stenography, he wasn't doing well. And he was not at all confident of really growing up in life. And he was a bachelor at that time. So he came to me and he said, sir, I'm thinking of resigning, not because of anything, but I'm really not my full self. I also felt bad for him because he was not good in the within quote secretarial work that we were giving. I mean, because I would go off for a meeting, I would give a dictation, and I expect that entire dictation to come out in a written form or in a typed form. It was not happening. One of those days when I had a little time, I spent some time with what comes out clearly is you're not good as a within quotes typist kind of a person, but let's see what you are good at. And as we observed and went back, we found that he was very good in organizing things. Whatever assignment that I gave him, he was very good in following through it. Later on, when we did the strengths for him, we found out that he had focus and arranger as 2 of his strengths. So I said, listen, let's work on this. And to cut the long story short, we got him to do a certification called PMI, that is from Project Management Institute. So he got certified as a project management professional. I gave him responsibilities in project management, and now, I mean, he's of course earning about 10 times more than what he was earning there, but his productivity has taken a leapfrog because he discovered who he was, not by way of his qualification, not by way of his previous experience, but by way of who he is in terms of his strengths, his DNA. And he's now working in the area of his strengths. He's of course got married, he's got 2 children, fulfilled life. Salary being 10 times more is only incidental, but him being engaged to his work, him looking forward to do more of who he is rather than what he is qualified in, and that's been a big game changer. I quote this particular example in many times, many situations, because far too often people are not engaged because they're a square peg in a round hole, and here was a person who discovered himself in a new dimension and is a completely different person.
No, absolutely. It's a very inspiring story, and the fact that you've been able to see the change happening in front of you is also very rewarding in its own way. Because a lot of times when it comes to coaching, the one thing that I feel always sad about is that I wish I was there to see that transformation happen for a person. Of course, the aha moments, they are the great themselves, but to be able to see that whole thing is also very, very rewarding in its own way. So Anand, tell me a little bit about. I mean, these are individual. This thing. I know that you do work with organizations as well, and in your past roles, etc. Have you had a chance to deploy the idea of strengths-based development with teams or departments or natural groups that work together?
Absolutely, absolutely. Right from 10 years ago, I was mandated with the task of identifying and developing high potentials. So what we did was we rolled out the strengths across this group of about 180, and the strengths grid that is available. So what we did was we did the strengths grid for the teams, and that particular organization, that was HCL Technologies, the Top Gun program. What we did was we got the strengths grid vertical, business vertical wise. So we had about 17 verticals. There was a travel, transportation and logistics vertical, life sciences, healthcare, pharma vertical, banking, finance, insurance vertical, government, public sector and utilities vertical, and so on. So we got the strengths grid for the verticals. We got the strengths grid for the band of employees, all managerial, all senior leadership. We even got gender wise strengths grid and so on. So I deployed the strengths across teams, and we found a lot of learnings that we had. We found certain of the domains were not present in certain teams, and then we used it for constructively doing IJ team synergies, how they could collaborate and really go across well. I have to tell you clearly, I have done more group-based interventions than I have done individual interventions. Even in my current organization, Leadership Matters, we are doing a lot of group-based interventions for organizations where we are introducing the strengths philosophy to large groups of 100 and 200, and we are coaching the leaders to in turn become coach so that they can become an effective manager.
Yeah. I'm going to pick your brain on this a little bit more, Anand, since you say that you've done a lot of work with teams and groups. Team Grid itself is a very powerful tool, the ability to be able to see the talent themes of all your team members in front of you and know the domains, etc. I would really like to understand from you, how else have you deployed the Team Grid? So, for example, you do a session in which people get to see it. Are you using it for some sort of some sort of goal setting or conflict management, or is there any particular good use you've found that the teams really take to, in addition to, of course, collaboration and understanding what each one does best? Just want to understand that from you a little bit.
Yeah. See, the first of the team grid is to understand the as-is situation, where they lead from or what their forte is. Of course, the fallout of that is sometimes the domains, particularly if a person's strengths is not spread across all domains, they get a little bit insecure. Take my case, for example. I have one strength, my number one strength in the strategic area, and the next four strengths are in the influencing domain. I have none in the relator. I have none in the execution. In my earlier role, I was mandated with large projects where execution was my number one KRA. So if somebody saw my strengths grid, they would get concerned. Hey, wait a minute, I mean, you don't even have one of your team in the execution grid. That's where coaching comes in. So when I introduce the strengths grid to teams, I tell them, listen, this is what their preferred path is. It is not that they are weak in that particular team that is not there. They have a workaround either by themselves, and this is where I also introduce them to get not just the top 5 but the full 32, so they get to see the next 5 or the next 8 to 10, and there invariably all of them have the teams in the other domains. So I introduce the team grid, explain that to them, and then give them ways of working around for them to achieve their prime KPP, key performance parameters, or KRAs. This also is a wonderful tool for collaboration, because if you actually see, the strengths grid for each team, it is complementary to the team that they have to work with. A particular team is strong on the influencing domain, another team is strong on the relating domain, another team is strong on the strategic domain, another team is strong on the thinking domain. I mean, people really get to see how unique they are. We know that the Gallup instrument itself says the chances of you finding a person with the same top 5 is 1 in 33 million. So I tell them, listen, each team, just like each individual is unique, each team is also unique, and there's a lot of fun that you can have in just understanding and appreciating not only for the individual for who he or she is, but also the team for who they are and how they function and how they work with one another. I also introduce the team dynamics so that they get to see where it comes in as a synergistic effect and so on.
Yeah, great. It's nice to hear. So the two things, what I heard you, of course, you've been able to tell them the differentiation between task and talent. So, just because you don't have themes in the execution doesn't mean you don't execute. So you do the task of executing using a different path, and then of course the collaboration piece of it. Collaboration is something I've started, quoting Kurt Leesbill very often. I mean, he spoke a lot about how humble it is to be able to go out and tell people that, look, this is where I need your help and this is where I can help you. So there is a element of humility there, which works very well. I have another question for you again. Going, because you worked with people in different at different stages of their career and different cultural backgrounds, etc. So do you sense a difference in talking about the strengths-based approach to, let's say, millennials, people who are just right out of campus and are coming into the corporate world, versus people who have been here for 20, 30 years and pretty much set in their ways of understanding or knowing themselves? So do you sense any difference when you work with these two different populations?
I see a difference. People who are the baby boomers or the Gen X people, they are set in their ways. So when you introduce them to strengths and tell them what all they can be capable of, the first reaction they have is, now, where were you 20 years ago? Why did you not tell me this? I'm cast in my ways and I really cannot change. But in the previous assignment, I had leaders, the average age of the leaders is about 49, which means they had spent almost about 20 years in a particular job doing a particular thing. And now I tell them, listen, this is what your strengths are, and you can really work around that. So they with resistance, they do that. The millennials, I mean, they are a bundle of energy. The first reaction they say is, can you come and talk to my parents about this? I always knew that I was different. Can you come and talk to my parents? Or could you have not told this to my teacher? They are open. they're flexible, and they're right there where they should be. And I do career coaching as one of my pro bono work for a large number of students. And so they come up to me and they say, sir, talking to you is a breath of fresh air, because all along I was made to conform to somebody else or to do. And Pooja, in India, for a long time we believed that the only two successful careers that a person who is good enough in life can have is either become an engineer or a doctor.
Or become a doctor. Yeah.
Or a chartered accountant, and can you imagine somebody who's not mathematically oriented, or somebody who's not oriented, but they are gifted in literature, they're gifted in a whole lot of other things, so the baby boomers are totally at a loss to understand that there was this philosophy that was existing for a long period of time, but the millennials are all embracing it, and they're saying, wow, this is the best thing that can happen. So I'm actually doing this courtesy my TEDx video. Many people are asking me to come and give lectures in the B schools on discovering and leveraging your uniqueness, and that's coming off very well.
Yeah. Great. So I think you raise a very important point from a cultural context that, if millennials are actively asking for it, I'm sure it's there in everybody's mind about why didn't you speak to my parents, my teacher. So the ecosystem around strengths is very, very important, and not just for them. What we've realized is even in organizations, it's very, very important.
Did you lose something, Pooja? Can you hear
Anand?
us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear.
Okay.
Can you
All
hear
right.
us?
Yes, I
Yes,
can.
I can hear you.
Good, that's
Anand put
fine.
a-
Just give it a break for a second. Roy can cut that part out for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Anand, talking a little bit about what we just spoke about, the millennials actively asking for whether there was an ecosystem around which we could have spoken about strengths, and we know that is very, very critical outside and inside organizations. So just wanted to pick your brain on that. If you're working within an organization around strengths with a particular team, do you actively also try and make a ecosystem out of it within the organization, the larger organization, to sort of ensure that everybody speaks the same language?
I have not been successful because I'm working with very large organizations with a employee size of, for example, the biggest client that I'm having, they've got about 80,000 employees. There's no way I can do justice to such a large thing. So I'm working on focused teams. So there's a specific division which has got about 1,800 people. Out of that, we have culled out about 600 people. So we are doing the strengths-based philosophy for the high potentials, for their reporting managers, for their subordinates. And now that this has got caught on into that, is putting their strength signature on their pin-up board. So the passers-by, the other members of the team say, hey, what's that? And so these people are trained to coach or kind of communicate about their top 5 strengths. So now we have got the strengths grid also put up. So in a small way we are doing. It will take a while for us to get to large organizations so that strengths-based philosophy becomes a manner of communication. One other organization, Deloitte, for example, I'm struggling with them because they are saying, listen, we have to be bound by US guidelines. Yes, we are a within code strengths-based organization, but we have to do certain things certain way. So what I do is take focus teams, introduce that strength philosophy, get these people to become our ambassadors, because once a person discovers his or her strengths, they suddenly become our evangelists, and then they take it forward.
Yeah, great point. I think the one thing I'm going to highlight here is, and the reason why it's still fresh in my mind is that we just concluded one accelerated program in Bangalore last week, and one of the discussions that was happening there was about the, at least Jim, in the Indian context, the thing around coaching, that sometimes if you're getting coached in an organization, the assumption is that it's because your performance is not up to the mark, or there is something which is lacking because of which you need a coaching intervention. However, hearing from you and hearing from some other people in that program, what we also realized was that was increasingly changing. So what you see is that when an organization, a big organization, gets you into, to start the strengths-based culture, either they start with the leadership team, or they do start with people who they really want to invest in. So for example, hypos, they want to invest in. So the strengths based discussion has now become a more developmental discussion, more forward looking, as opposed to a post facto why people weren't good at what they did. So that's very, very heartening to hear from you also. So knowing as much as I know about you, Anand, I'm sure you have plans around the idea of strengths-based development going forward. So what next?
Yes.
Where do you foresee this?
Yeah, I want to introduce the strengths based philosophy, the positive movement in large number of organizations. And one advantage that I have is among the available psychometric instrument, this is the least when it's less than $10, even though Gallup charges $10, courtesy the online e-commerce companies like Flipkart and Amazon, you can get the book for about $6 to $7. So what I've done in the organization that I work for, the leaders, for the line managers, they are getting into coaching interventions, but they are a team of 8 to 10 per person. They are asking them to buy the book and really go forward. So what I'm doing is that on the 10th of this month in Hyderabad, I'm doing a public program. On the 31st, I'm doing another public program in Bangalore. So what I want to do is I want to do more and more public programs to introduce this concept to people. Even in organizations, I am doing the group interventions or team-based interventions. So this way, we are a large population, 1.2 billion. The working class is about close to 600 million people. We have got 800 odd million people under the age of 35. So we've got a huge potential to impact our nation through this strengths-based, get them to be rewired, if I may use the word, go back and connect with themselves for who they are rather than who they aren't. And as Marcus Buckingham puts in, try to bring out what is there rather than put in what was not there. So whatever they are blessed with, their own uniqueness, discover that and leverage that, and there'll be a different world altogether. And that's my focus, and I'm increasingly getting requests for my public programs, and courtesy my TEDx video on discovering and leveraging uniqueness. A lot of schools and colleges are asking me that. I do that as a pro bono work, but I'm also doing corporate interventions where we're introducing the concept of strengths for the hypos and for their managers to begin with, but soon we want to spread it to others.
Yes, touch wood on that, because that's exactly what we have in mind to be able to make this into. We want 1 billion people to eventually have taken the Strengths Finder, and with that sort of a vision in mind, it's only people like you that are sort of taking the movement forward, which is great. Jim, any questions from the chat room for Anand?
Yeah, yeah, excuse me. So Natul had asked, how does your command and significance play out for you? How do those two together kind of play out in the role that you're doing?
Is that Nitul?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi,
Unless you have that,
Nitul.
unless you have that too.
No,
Yeah.
I
Go
don't.
ahead.
Thank you. My significance, drives me to not do things for the sake of doing things, but for the sake of, making an impact so that it stands out. So when I choose projects which has the maximum opportunity for impact. My in very well because I don't necessarily take on if I don't have full responsibility. So I need to be in charge. I need to take command. And my organizations, the moment they see the way I go about doing things, they give me that charge. So it kind of is my team dynamic. It works very well with me. Because of my command, I'm able to be more significant. And because I am significant, people give me more charge.
No, very good. We'll wait another minute or so to see if anybody else. Sometimes they don't believe me that they can actually ask questions from the chat room and we'll answer them. So we'll see if we can get a few more questions from you. Pooja, you kind of stole my favorite question: is how do you see the cultural differences when we think about because I do a lot of work here in the United States, and so when we think about the cultural differences between what you see in India versus maybe what the perception is or what you see what's coming out when we think about coaching in the two separate countries. Anything else you would want to highlight as you think about maybe Indian executives and American executives? And do you see a difference in the way they're being coached, or can you do a one-size-fits-all across both cultures?
Jim, one size fits all. I've got clients in the US, I've got clients in the Middle East, I've got clients in Australia. There's no way we can do a one size fits all. But I can definitely tell you this. In US, or my clients in US, they're happy to mention that they are being coached. And they're not at all secretive about that. In fact, they say, I've got my so-and-so as my coach. My clients in India, they're very secretive. They don't want to mention that they are being coached. So even the times that they schedule, it's one-on-one. I have one situation where a client has engaged me to coach 28 people, and I have to raise my bill only when I finish 8 at a time in this particular organization. They're not going through their coordinator. They're coming directly to me, and as far as I'm concerned, I finished my 8 coaching hours, but I'm not able to raise the bill because they have not told their coordinator that they are being coached. And as Pooja would have also mentioned, our performance culture is when a person is not doing well in the performance management system, when they are in the meets expectations or in the below expectations, they are put on a PIP, performance improvement program, and invariably they are assigned a coach. So it's always a negative connotation for being coached. So that's something that happens in the Middle East. And the few clients that I have in the Middle Eastern thing, they want to make sure that I'm not coaching another equal of theirs. I mean, they want me to be exclusive. So it flavors vary, but the one big thing that I see is in the American context or in the Western context, people are not at all ashamed. Why should I use ashamed? In fact, they are proud of the fact that they are being coached, and they even put that in their LinkedIn, saying that I'm being coached, I'm part of the coaching, whereas in India it is largely secretive, and in the Middle East it is exclusive.
Do you see that changing in India at all as time progresses? Do you see pockets of that changing, or is that largely staying the same at this point?
I have not seen a drastic change in the last 4 to 5 years, but in the last 6 months, the hypos that I'm working with, they're happy to say that they are being coached. In fact, many of the times, they don't even report their performance improvement as a result of the coaching that they got. They will say that the performance improvement came because they did some extra work, when in reality, it was the coach's intervention that got them to do. They find it a little bit shameful to admit that somebody else helped them do what they are now doing. So I'm seeing that changing, where they are giving credence or credibility or credit to the people who help them, but that is happening in the last say 5 to 6 months. But by and large, people are very secretive. They want to be self-made individuals. Even if the organization has asked them to go for a coaching, the coach asked me, but this is what I made of myself.
Yeah, no, good feedback on that. JB out in the chat room asks, what's been the biggest benefit that you've seen from coaching with strengths? Pretty broad question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest benefit that I've been seen in coaching from strengths is I don't have to worry about the 95 or 96% of the things that the person is not good at. I don't have to spend my energy on that. I just have to spend my energy on the 4 to 5% of the things that the person is good at. I mean, even one of the great Einstein, they say that he's used only about 6 to 7% of his brains or his capability, So all that we have to do, and Thomas Alva Edison said, if we did all that we are capable of, we'll literally astound ourselves, The world is asking us to do things that we are not capable of, we are not cut out for. But all that we need to do is just focus on discovering what our uniqueness is and leveraging that. So the big difference that I found in using the strengths-based philosophy is getting the person to do what he or she was made to do in the first place, or was hardwired in the first place. I use those 5 questions, what is your yearning? What is your natural flow? What is your rapid learning? What is your moments of excellence? And what is your moments of satisfaction? And 90% of the time, without doing the strengths assessment, they come out with the strength themes that lead them to have rapid learning, that lead them to yearn, that lead them to have moments of satisfaction, moments of excellence. And so they say, wow, I'm so glad that you came by and you made my day. I've had a situation where a lady, this was in one of the cities in India, and she said, I could not go out in the public because I was always ashamed of not being what people asked me to be. My husband asked me to do this. My children asked me to do this. I'm not that. Now, as I've gone through this session, I know what I'm good at. So I'm going to be myself. And she said, I've reinvented myself. So I've become a new person. So these are some of the discoveries that people go through in the strengths-based philosophy.
One more question. This one's mine. When you approach coaching, what's your favorite part? I mean, what keeps bringing you back to it? What are the moments when you're like, this is why I do what I do? What are those moments? What's that little kernel that pops out that you just get really excited about when you're coaching?
The beauty about coaching is no two people are the same. Just last month, I did a coaching intervention. I did a strengths-based intervention. Started off with a group. There was this group which had strategic as the number 2 strength in 4 people. Okay? And that's a number 2. Strategic number 2. When you look at the report, number 2, when you read the report, the personal insights, each person read it out and it looked like 4 different reports. And suddenly the group discovered, wow, it is the same theme, it is in the same ranking order, but the description of it as applied to the individual is different. Of course, the book has got the same theme description, but the personal insights that the people got, these 4 people, all of whom had strategic as their number 2, was different. So for me, no 2 assignments are the same. I look forward to coaching because I know person has got these number of strengths in a different order or in the same order. It's very unlikely that I'll get another person in the same order because of that 1 in 33 million, but each person individualizes it differently. There is opportunity to apply that with respect to their work. Even in the same department, the same theme pans out differently. So the joy that I have is that each assignment is unique. Each person is unique, even though they have same or similar themes.
Let me do one more question from the chat room because Carl asked a really interesting question. We get this question all the time. He asked, have you seen your top 5 strengths changing over a period of time, or has it been the same throughout your career for you personally?
Yeah, I've told this to Pooja. I've done the test 3 times for completely crazy reasons. I did my first test in 1998 because the client asked us to do that. And then when I did this large intervention for the group of 600 odd managers, I did that. And now as part of the coaching certification, I did that. My top 5 has not changed. Okay, my changed. For example, in one of the earlier tests, I had communication as number 1, and now communication is number 2. So I've personally not seen my top 5 change. It's only now that I got to get the full 34 themes, and I'm not at all surprised that I have individualization, ideation, activator, maximizer also as part of my themes. So I'm very pleased with myself. The fact that it does not change. It does not change for me. I don't know about others.
You know, one of the things to just think about from that standpoint is that it's 177 paired questions that you would have to get exactly right twice in a row that you're taking very, very quickly for it to be exactly the same. So a lot of people ask us that question, and I say, you know, if you got it exactly the same, exactly, I mean, number one is number one, number two is number two, exactly the same as all 34, you might want to go bet on the lottery at that point, because that would be really, really difficult to get that. But what you said, the important point is that those themes in the top 10 stay in the top 10 usually. They can move around a little bit. They can shift. Usually the bottom stays at the bottom. So it's just one of those things to remember. People get hung up on that. I'm like, wow, if you could answer the same exact questions 177 times, 177 questions exactly the same twice, you'd be really special at that point if you could do it that way. So just a reminder in that people get a little crazy sometimes when those things shift around a little bit, and that's okay, right, from that standpoint. What's important is that who you are stays the same over time, and that you can exercise those themes and turn them into strengths. Pooja, as we kind of wrap this up, why don't you wrap it up for us, and then I'll close this.
That's all that I had from my end. And Anand, as usual, I mean, we've had so many interactions now. It's always a pleasure to hear from you and know some of the exciting work that you do, because every time we speak to you, there is something new, there is something exciting that's going on in the area of strengths, and it's always great to hear from you. So thank you so much for taking time out and sharing all these things with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pooja. It's been such a pleasure interacting with you and the team.
No, likewise. Great meeting you, and thanks for coming on here as well. And for those that came in live to listen to us tonight, thanks for your great questions. I'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. You can send those to us on email, coaching@Gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this show, as well as past ones, and the links to our Facebook and YouTube page. A lot of resources that are available for you. They're all available, coaching.gallup.com. If you have an idea for a blog post for our coaches blog, we are interviewing for guest writers. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, and put guest blogger in the subject line. We'll get back to you with some information about what we're looking for. We now have some 30 global meetups going on around the world. If your city is not represented in those, that's at the coaches blog. Go to the meetup tab. If your city's not represented in there, we'd love to have you start doing that in the city that you're starting a meetup. Is actually super simple. And so if you want to start doing that in the city you're located in, send me an email, jim_collison@gallup.com, and I would be happy to help you get one started in the city that you're in. Don't forget, we also have Android and iPhone apps available for you. If you have trouble remembering what your top 5 are, you can put that on your phone, log in every time, and they're right there for you. And, of course, you can get that. Pooja, you mentioned a course earlier. Do we have any courses coming up there in India we want to highlight?
We have the accelerated program. We just concluded one last week, and the next one that's coming up, it's in Delhi, the week of December 14th. So that's the one that's coming up.
Awesome. I'm going to try and get into that course so I can come hang out with you guys. Wouldn't that be fun?
Anytime.
Yes, that would be awesome.
So much fun.
Yeah, I don't think they'll let me do it, but I would love to make it a long way from Omaha to Delhi there. So. But we want to say, if you're interested in doing that, all our courses are available. A list of all of them around the world are available at our coaches blog, GallupStrengthsCenter.com. We want to thank everyone for joining us today, and if you enjoyed it, please share it, and we'll look forward to the next Call to Coach. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.